We're now going to learn how to use the calculators. This stuff is actually pretty much impossible to do without a calculator. So the first thing we're going to do is you need a calculator that has these buttons. So it's got to have a sine, a cosine, and a tangent. And it's got to have, essentially it has to have those three. Ideally you want something where if you press sine, the word sine appears on the calculator. If you don't, that's not the end of the world. So what you're going to do right now, if you don't have the calculator, pause the video, go get your calculator. Now, you're going to type into your calculator sine 30. And what should happen, if you type in sine of 30, it should give you 0.5. So sine of 30 is 0.5. Now some options, some calculators, you actually have to type it in backwards. So some calculators you have to type in the 30 and then the sine. And then that will give you the 0.5. Another thing that could possibly go wrong, let's see if I could set it up to do that. Oops. So if I go sine of 30, I might get something weird like this. You might, when you type it in, you might get sine of 30 is minus 0.988. Now that doesn't work. That is going to be incorrect for our purposes. What's happening here is it's being measured in a different system. So normally we measure angles in degrees, but there's other measurements. There's something called radians. There's something called gradians. It's kind of like when the distance, you can measure it in centimeters or you can measure it in inches. Angles you can measure in degrees or radians. So you want to make sure your calculator is in degrees, and the way to make sure is that sine of 30 is 0.5. And if that's not working, you probably need to figure out how to change it. So in this calculator, for example, I press mode a couple of times, go to degrees. Other calculators sometimes have a DRG button, or a DRG with an arrow, or it might be a setup, or it's usually something along those lines. So keep on going until sine of 30 is 0.5. Once you have that, let's calculate some things. So let's figure out cosine of 60, tangent of 60, sine 23, cos 71, and stuff like that. So for example, the cosine of 60, if you're in degrees and everything, that's not an oops, that's actually correct, is going to be 0.5. The tangent of 60 is, now we have a lot of decimals, and there's actually, these decimals go on for pretty much forever. So what we're going to do is we're going to often write 4 numbers down. I'll explain when we need more numbers later, but it's going to be, in this case, we're going to write 1.732. And the sine of 23 is 0.39. 3907. And the cos of 71 is 0.3256. It says 55, but if we're rounding, it's going to be 56. Notice most of the numbers are below 1. Tangent ones could be above 1. And that's how you use the calculator.